Dr. Bensong risked everything when he used the Quantum Leap Accelerator to travel back in time. Now our team's working to find out why. As he leaps between bodies with no memory of who he is, he still has one hope. That his next leap...
Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from Korman Productions with my co-host Stacie, here to talk about the 4th episode of the Quantum Leap revival, titled A Decent Proposal. The episode's description reads as follows. Ben leaps to 1980s Los Angeles into the body of Eva, a no-nonsense bounty hunter, in the midst of securing an elusive target. Ben remembers more about his own life. The episode was directed by Rachel Tarley, and the episode was written by Moira Kirkland. Before going any further, I will tell you a couple of things. This is not a spoiler-free podcast, so if you haven't watched the episode, I highly recommend you go and check it out, and then come back and give us a listen. Secondly, if you are listening to one of the platforms that this podcast is now listenable, please subscribe. You can also head over to my YouTube channel, Korman Productions, where the podcast can be watched, as well as additional content can be discovered, both Quantum Leap related and otherwise. If you are already on my YouTube channel and like this podcast, please like, share, and comment, as well as subscribing to my channel. Now, Stacie did not know I was going to do this, but I have 2 birthday shout-outs. One to my co-host Stacie, who turned 40 years old on Saturday, I believe it was. Sunday. Sorry, my bad.
We had the party on Saturday. Birthday was Sunday. Thank you.
How do you feel?
Well, I'd like to say I don't feel any different after a day, but to be honest, I've been pretty tired and exhausted lately, so I don't know, maybe 40's catching up to me.
Or maybe it could just be the season. Now, there's another birthday that I don't know that you're aware of.
Oh, I am?
Oh, dang it, I was so hoping I was going to surprise you with this. Okay, the other birthday shout-out is to Scott Bakula himself.
Yes.
Who played Sam Beckett.
Is my birthday buddy. We have the same birthday.
And I was totally hoping my co-host was not going to know that. So, but oh well, them's the breaks. One more thing. Before getting into the show proper, we have news about Quantum Leap.
Yes.
The series has got an additional 6-episode order, which is 2 less than what you were originally thinking that was going to happen.
Right. I had originally heard there were 12 episodes ordered, and then there was another 8 on the table for the back end of the season. So we got 6 out of the 8 for a total of 18 episodes for the first season, which I think is a win.
It's definitely a win. They are now saying that the ratings are pretty good.
Yeah.
I'm still confused as how we went from bleh to they're doing pretty good when they're the same numbers, but, whatever.
Yeah, so the positive things were said this week in the media regarding the ratings. We got 6 more episodes. 18's a pretty decent first season nowadays. It seems like NBC is giving this show a fair chance. And
with the back order of episodes, that means that a season 2 of this series is possible.
Yeah, that's our next goal is to get them to pick it up for a second season, which of course they're going to wait till season 1 is done, or at least much further along before they start talking about that. But that's something for all of us to keep in mind, is to keep those ratings up. If you watch the show live, stream it on Peacock, stream it when you're not home, let your pets watch it while they're home alone. Keep those ratings up.
Yes, absolutely. Let your dogs and cats watch together. It'll bring them together. So we were really excited about this episode for plenty of reasons. One of them being the return of Justin Hartley. Justin Hartley, who played Kevin Pearson in This Is Us, a show that was a favorite of both of ours, in which I did at least 75 videos on the series. So I'm excited to be talking about this guy again. But that wasn't the only thing. It's Ben's first leap into a woman.
Mm-hmm.
And we were going to get some backstory on magic.
Yes.
So we were quite hyped about this episode. So tell me, Stacie, did this episode live up to the hype for you?
I think so. Yeah, it was a great episode. It hit all of those points you just talked about. It was fun seeing the guest stars we had in this episode. We did get some clarification from Magic, which I do have a little issue with his story. We'll talk about that later. But for the most part, I think it was really informative, and it helped pull pulled that original storyline in. I think it helped explain some things to new viewers or casual viewers who didn't really know what's up with magic yet. So this was a surprise, I'm sure, to a lot of viewers to learn what we learned in this episode. Overall, I think they did a pretty good job. And it felt like a classic Quantum Leap episode. It was nice.
Yeah, it's funny. 3 episodes in, and it retroactively makes me dislike the pilot even more. Because now that I've seen what they can do, that episode is that much more disappointing to me.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is the fact that they kind of scrambled to remake a pilot after they'd already had a pilot.
Right, which is another thing that I should probably bring up. Episode 6, which is 2 episodes from now, which is going to be the earthquake episode, is actually the original pilot.
Right, that story was the original pilot. Now, they did, of course, change the episode, I'm assuming, to make it fit in line. They're not going to reintroduce, you're a time traveler.
Yeah, that wouldn't work. But it would be interesting to see if we can see the seams in how they managed to do that.
Yeah, right. So if that was originally filmed as the pilot, and then they kind of took this story and made it the pilot, I feel like maybe they were a little rushed in their post-production to make it all fit together. And I think it comes down to they were just trying to cram too much into 45 minutes of television. If they had made it a 2-episode, like a double episode pilot, like the original Quantum Leap, I think it might have been a lot better if they took more time to show us the same thing they showed us, but slowed it down a little.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And as far as this episode, I also agree. I thought it was a pretty great episode. There's a ton of great scenes. Everything pretty much lived up to my expectations. It was great to see Justin Hartley again. He wasn't playing Kevin Pearson, but he might as well have been. I mean,
right?
Basically, see, here's the thing. I think Justin Hartley is a very good actor. I think that he also is somewhat limited at the same time, where he basically just ends up playing the same guy every time.
It felt like we knew Jake, right?
Pretty much.
And we could sympathize with him throughout this.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, on that note, we did make a mistake last week when we were talking about this episode.
Oh, yes. I said that his wife was playing the mirror image.
Yes, we were mistaken.
Yeah, she is actually a character in this episode. This is Sophia Pernas. I actually went and looked up the pronunciation. It's pronounced exactly as it looks. She is actually playing a character within this episode named Tammy, who Ben and Jake end up going up against.
Yes. So that's why it seemed like she had a lot of screen time. It's because she was one of the actual main characters of the episode and not the mirror image. So apologies to Justin Hartley and his wife Sophia, and to the actress playing the mirror image that we mixed that up.
There's similarities thematically to an episode in the original series, Hunting We Will Go, in that was also a bounty hunter episode. Did you find any other connections between them?
I didn't find any specific references, no. And as I was telling you, Dave, I also got vibes from this episode, a little less indirectly, but I got vibes to MIA, which of course is an important episode, but just certain moments, especially in the beginning of this episode, really just kind of gave me a similar vibe to how that story was set up, with him being, Sam had leaped into an undercover police officer who was dressed like a woman, and obviously Ben wasn't dressed as a woman, he was a woman, but it kind of, I don't know, it felt like a very similar setup to me. And the name Jake was the name of the person Sam had leaped into in MIA, which of course is the name they gave Justin Hartley. And then it also gave me vibes to Her Charm, which was the witness protection episode of the original series, where Sam was a FBI agent trying to protect somebody who was in witness protection. Like during the whole part when they had first taken Tammy into custody, it reminded me of that. So I felt vibes of different episodes, but I did not find any direct links to any original Quantum Leap characters or episodes that I could find. And
that seems 2 episodes in a row where there were no direct connections.
Yeah.
Unlike the second episode of the series. Okay, so we open up this episode in the bar that we saw last week. He's leaped into a woman. He doesn't know that yet, but he sees himself in the mirror image as a woman. He's instantly getting sexually harassed by the person that turns out to be his target. Throws a drink in his face instead of punching the guy. which I thought he would do. And it was actually kind of interesting watching Ben react to this situation. Addison appears and takes great pleasure. And you mentioned that Addison appeared like real quick.
Yeah, she appeared within like 1 minute of Ben getting there.
And that's a far cry from the original series. I pointed out to you that Addison seems a lot more present than Al ever did.
Mm-hmm.
She takes great pleasure in his situation. Ben ends up emptying his purse and we find handcuffs, a taser, sounding very kinky. And he's not quite sure what this means or what's going on. But he is soon joined by Justin Hartley, playing Jake.
Who he thinks is also someone trying to hit on him.
And he turns out to be wrong about that, but he might be someone who could hit on him. After all, well, first of all, they're dating, but he's the same guy who played Kevin Pearson, and Kevin Pearson slept with everybody. I don't think he would even have a problem knowing that Ben was in there, to be honest with you. Jake is his partner and significant other. They spot the target, and Ben does the rookie move of pointing at the target. Target goes running. They corner him in the parking lot. And the guy's name is Stuart, by the way, but that's soon going to be relevant because, actually, no, he's actually somewhat important. And Ben ends up just straight up punching him out as the guy tries to approach him again, thinking he's going to sexually harass the guy that is trying to corner him and take him into custody. They drive, and Ziggy seems to actually be getting information pretty quickly for once. But once again, Ziggy is very wrong. Ziggy says he's there to save a girl named Tammy, who was in trouble for parking tickets.
Right.
And I was so confused by this, especially as we go along in this episode, how Ziggy even manages to come up with this, because, well, spoiler alert, Tammy ends up being a drug lord.
Named Carla.
And I don't understand how Ziggy managed to zero in on this person being the one that Ben was there for, while totally missing who this person actually is.
Right. And I think it has to come down to the fact that Carla was never caught, so there was no record that this parking ticket offender, Tammy Jean Jessup, was Carla. Like, that was never came into light, so that's why Ziggy didn't know who this was. And I can only assume that Tammy disappeared, right, because Carla skipped town. Mm-hmm. Tammy was never heard from again after not appearing in court, so Ziggy must have them flagged as a missing person, thinking they got murdered or something, and that's why Ziggy said, you got to look for this person.
And it's a very weird coincidence that Ziggy ends up being right,
though
very, very wrong at the same time.
Right. And Addison seemed confused by this too, but at the same time, she didn't question it. She was full on in, we got to find Tammy. Let's look for Tammy. Keep your mind on Tammy, nothing else.
We got to save Tammy from those parking tickets because that's a major big deal. I mean, at times, Sam would have to leap in to save a cat. We saw that in at least one episode. It wasn't the full episode focus, but it was in a leap that we saw in Honeymoon Express at the beginning. So sometimes, Sam was there for minor things, but this seemed just kind of like, I don't know, weird. Anyway, so they stop at Eva's dad's Bale's Bondsman store. Try saying that 5 times fast.
Yes, her father, Alberto, is who they both work for.
The door is cracked open. Jake goes to investigate, and Ben eventually follows. But it's a setup. Justin Hartley has decided to propose. And that would actually be Jake proposing, not Justin Hartley. And honestly, if Justin Hartley were proposing to me, I would have the same horrified reaction as Ben does. And we have our credits.
Now, I felt confused by this.
How so?
That Ben was just like, I need more time. I don't know the answer.
Oh, yeah, I did forget to get into that.
Why didn't Addison immediately look and tell Ben what is Eva supposed to say here?
Yeah, Addison is not particularly great.
10 minutes later in the episode, Ben asks, so, what was the original response to the proposal?
Yeah, it is curious.
And even at that point, Addison didn't want to look it up. He had to coerce her into finally looking up and finding out, well, no, these two didn't end up getting married.
I don't know. I think Addison must have been feeling pretty lazy in this episode because there are times where she's flat out not good at her job or really doing anything to help.
Yeah, she was distracted. But, I don't know. It felt weird to me that between the two of them, they couldn't figure out how to answer this proposal. Like, if if Ava was supposed to say yes right there, you could have just screwed up their whole lives.
Right. I think if he knew, however, that he did not end up marrying this person, would that make it clear cut that he's just supposed to say no at that point?
Well, I think it might have been good for him to know what was supposed to happen.
Right. Yeah, I didn't even realize that, but yeah, Addison, all in all, this was not a great showing for her this episode. All right, yeah, so he doesn't know what to answer. The dad comes out to celebrate, making things even more awkward. And Jake doesn't end up reacting well to this. We learn that Jake has a new job in Illinois, which is where Eva is supposed to go. Addison is trying to get Ben back on point with the mission with Tammy. Apparently, she was seen that morning and never seen again. Ben's trying to deal with both the relationship of his host and the mission itself. So he has kind of like a duo focus, much like Sam had at times in the original series.
And you can also tell Ben's not totally convinced about the mission yet, right? The whole thing just seems really... He's just not convinced that there's something serious going on right now. And he's not sure what to do with it.
I mean, when we're talking about parking tickets, would you be convinced that this was the mission that you were on?
Right.
So yeah, I don't blame Ben there. He thinks he's more there to help that relationship. Ben ends up joining Jake in the car, and he says that they can talk while going on this mission at the same time. And this is his way to get back on point on the mission that Addison is trying to get him to do, while at the same time working on the relationship. Back at the project, we briefly have the people talking about Ben leaping into a woman.
Mm-hmm.
Jen makes a reference to pantyhose, which I think is actually a callback to the original series, because Sam never did like pantyhose.
Yes.
And where would you rank this episode, off topic a little bit here, among the episodes in which a Sam or Ben leaped into a woman?
Well, I feel like they gave us that whole, right within the cold open of Ben dealing with being harassed by this person in the bar, throwing the drink on them. We get this little mention here about it, and then I feel like they kind of drop it after that. The rest of the episode, there's no real mention or issues of the fact that he's a woman.
Right.
So it seems like Ben adjusted to this very, very quickly compared to Sam, whose entire first female leap was an awakening for him, about women. But also, being a woman in the 80s is probably very different than being a woman in the 50s. So
I would think
it was
so.
Easier overall. But yeah, I feel like they kind of wanted to get through that whole, you're a woman thing quickly and not focus on it.
And you know what? I actually appreciate that, because the original episode, upon rewatch, is kind of irritating to watch. It's like every other second, Sam's a woman, isn't that hilarious? And that's something that kind of irritates me watching it nowadays. So I kind of like the more episodes where they were more subtle about it. Like your favorite, and I guess mine, Another Mother.
Mm-hmm.
Where, we have those little moments, but Sam more or less adjusts to the role, and he's actually good at being a mother.
Right. Sam leaped into a woman. I came up with this number not that long ago. I want to say it was like 8 or 9 times he was a woman, something like that.
It wasn't many.
So he got used to it, and it did become less of issue later on for him, as he adjusted to those things more. But also, it's got to bring into question, this has to be different for Sam, who wasn't in these people's bodies.
Right.
Versus Ben, who is physically in this woman's body. So they're obviously not going to get into those details, but you got to think.
I mean, there was a sly little reference at the beginning of the episode.
Right. Addison made a comment, but I don't know. It's one of those things where you look at how they're changing the complete way that leaping works, and this is something that would affect, right?
Absolutely.
So, yeah, it's interesting, but I think that they moved past the you're a woman thing pretty quickly and got to, the bigger points of the episode.
We do have your Ian mention.
Yes, I was curious how Ian would react to Ben leaping into a woman, and I thought they would have some interesting commentary on it. We only got one little line, which Ian was away at the moment that Ben leaped in, and Ian comes up and's like, okay, so what's going on? Finds out that Ben is in a woman, and Ian refers to it as Ben's first gender creative experience.
It was definitely an interesting phrasing.
Yeah, I liked that. I thought that there was going to be more discussion about this at the project, and there wasn't. That was really where we left it.
I mean, we might have that discussion in the future, but we definitely wanted to make way for other things in this episode. For instance, the magic scene that we have later. So, Janice is poking around, trying to get Ziggy to predict what they're going to do in the future.
Right, which is interesting.
We're not sure what exactly that's about.
Right, but we know Janice is digging into all of their files.
And Ian says that he, in order to figure out what she is doing, needs access to all the personnel files, including Magic's, who is top level. And this prompts Magic to take Ian out for a coffee to have a conversation, because there's things that Magic wants to tell them personally, rather than having Ian read it for themselves. And that's what leads to the big magic scene. Ben and Jake go to Tammy's house, setting up so that she can't run. They think they're just going to take her to court. Ben wants to know what Eva said in the original timeline to Jake, which you pointed out should have happened way sooner than it did.
Yeah, he was like, oh, by the way, what happened in that proposal? Did they get married? It seems like a kind of an afterthought at this point.
And so Jake wants to talk more about their relationship, which, you know, Ben is trying to play off, but he really doesn't know what to say. Eva said no in the original timeline, and she ended up staying with her father.
Mm-hmm. She continued to work as a bounty hunter.
And Ben wants to play matchmaker and save Tammy. He's invested because he's starting to remember his girlfriend. He's starting to have memories of Asin.
Yeah, he keeps seeing that one image that we got at the end of the last episode where he woke up in bed, there's a woman with him, and he doesn't remember who she is, but he remembers that he loves her. He's in a relationship. He's starting to feel bad that he left this person behind. He even goes as far as asking Addison, is she mad at me?
That happens in a later scene.
Oh, okay.
Yes, but no, it's okay that you bring it up now.
I thought it happened there.
No, it actually happens in a later scene, but yes, he ends up concerned that that the girlfriend that he left behind is mad at him, and Addison ends up saying no, that she just wants to know what's going on. Well, like why he did this, like just pretty much like the rest of them, including Ben himself. So I don't have to make that point later now. Jake ends up knocking on Tammy's door, and eventually they go into the house. They talk. He's trying to take her to go to court or whatever. Eventually the bad guys with guns come after them.
And she acts all surprised, like, what do you mean there's guys with guns after me?
And I'm a little confused. These are not working for her? Or are these like different bad guys trying to get to her? Or are they working for her? And they just trying to make a dramatic scene or something?
Honestly, I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, they never really cleared that one up. Ben, Jake, and Tammy dive into a dumpster. By the way, don't do this. Everything I've read suggests that actually jumping into a dumpster like that from a window will get you killed, or at the very least seriously hurt. So don't take your advice from television. They end up getting away. Jake is driving on a rim because his tire is flat. Yep, he's going to need a new rim because, you know, he can't be driving around on a rim. And that's going to cost a pretty penny, but they're bounty hunters, so maybe that'll be okay. The goons worked for... Do you know the name of the gang? Like, I have it in my notes.
Serpiente. The Serpent.
La Serpiente. I mean, I heard the name a couple of times, and I have it somewhat written in my notes, but I
think
didn't...
we're fairly close.
Okay. And according to Tammy, they tried to flip her boyfriend, Zach, but because of her parking tickets, the police are going to make it look like she's cooperating to push Zach into cooperating. And I'm pretty sure everything that she says in the scene is BS.
Right.
I think this turns out to be a lie.
Right. Of course. Like she says, the reason their suitcases are here is because Zach and her are going on vacation. Zach's going to pop the question. She can't miss it. That's why she can't go to court today.
Ben figures that Tammy and Zach were skipping town. Addison says Ziggy is acting up, so she has to go. And Addison tells Ben not to trust Tammy. And this goes back to thematically what we were talking about with A Hunting We Will Go, in that the main character in that episode was someone that seemed like you couldn't trust her, and for the most part, Sam couldn't, but she turned out to be innocent. Tammy is the exact opposite of that.
Right. Of course, her issue is not parking tickets.
So there's something bigger going on than $500 worth of parking tickets. That's good to know. Back at the project, Addison tells Jen that Ben is starting to remember her, and she wants to encourage that, which is going right back over everything we've already been through.
Right.
On this
Addison
issue.
is again saying, I know we agree not to tell him anything, but he's starting to remember on his own. Let's push him. Let's tell him everything we know so we can find out everything he knows.
It's pretty clear that this is not a rational decision, but more of an emotional one.
Yes, Addison wants him to remember her. They're so close to that, and she's like, let's just do it already. Let's tell him. I don't like lying to him. I want to tell him the truth. Maybe he'll be able to tell us what's going on. I'm ready for answers. Of course, Jen comes back by telling Addison what Jen has been avoiding telling her since last episode. And that is the fact that they found out Ben's been lying to Addison for 6 whole months.
And Jen is going to have to go over those 6 months worth of memories and to find the 6 months worth of lies.
Right. They need to go deep diving into Addison and Ben's calendars and finding every moment they were apart and uncovering every lie that he may have told her.
Now, Addison ends up saying that if Ben is the person that she thinks he is, she will forgive him for whatever he has lied about. But if he's not, it doesn't matter.
Right.
In the past, Tammy is handcuffed to a pipe or something in the alleyway, while Jake is fixing that tire. But, why is he fixing the tire? He needs a new rim. He's been driving on that for a while now. Anyway, Tammy ends up annoying the crap out of the both of them, so Ben ends up moving her so that Ben can try to fix Jake's and Eva's relationship. And he actually hits on a point that ends up being somewhat close to the truth of what's going on here, in that Ben thinks that Eva just didn't want to move to Illinois. And that's pretty close to the truth that ends up being revealed later in the episode. Addison appears, and they notice that Tammy is getting away. Jake is pretty cool with letting her go, but Addison says there's a 100% chance.
Yep,
that
100% chance again.
Yes, we're getting that number that we never heard in the original series, as you pointed out, that Ben needs to get her to the courthouse. And again, I don't know that Ziggy is even right here with this 100% number.
They said 100% chance that if she gets away, you won't leap.
Okay.
Which also seems weird. Like, it was never actually established that if you fail your mission, you live in this person forever.
It was hinted at in the original series.
It's something they were worried would happen.
They were kind of wishy-washy about that because they, for the longest time, were saying you have to complete your mission or you won't leap, or you probably won't leap. And then at some point in the series, they started saying success has nothing to do with leaping.
Right.
But that was news to us because they never clarified that with us. So that was kind of weird in the original series. And it's weird here, too.
It's very weird. And it seems really like kind of out of nowhere that it's like, you're about to be stuck here forever if you don't save this woman. And of course, Jake's not on board because he thinks this is still about $500 in parking tickets.
Ben thinks that she's going to the boyfriend's club. Jake thinks that would be stupid, but Ben says that when you're in love, you do whatever you need to do to protect that person. Ben asks Addison if she's okay in the car, and Jake answers with sarcasm, and this was the most Kevin Pearson-like moment in the episode for me. I mean, the entire episode he's acting like Kevin, plain and simple, but here, here with the snark, that was very Kevin-like. And then we have the Ian and magic scene, which, if you'll pardon the pun, was pure magic, even though you have quite a few issues with that.
I have really one issue, but yeah, overall, it was a good scene, and it was very important. It's something we've been waiting for, right, since the show started. And I'm glad that we got a full-on scene dedicated to it, a big actual chunk of time in this episode.
Absolutely. And we will get into your issues at the end per your request. You want to talk about all that at the end. This scene was absolutely worth the wait, and I'm absolutely glad that they put it in the episode. Oh, but one thing we did say in the scene that I do want to talk about now is that Magic's motivation seems the same as our villain, Janice.
Yes.
They both seem intent on getting Sam Beckett home. That's why Magic started the project back up when he learned what had actually happened because of his access. He learned about the Quantum Leap Project, he learned about Sam Beckett, and he got his answers as to who this man he was dreaming of after the fact. I probably should have just gone into talking about it, but that's okay. But yes, so it seems like Janice and Magic's motivation are the same. Back at the club, Jake doesn't seem to know why the mission is so important to Eva. But Ben says that he thinks that the trick to the mission and saving their relationship is one and the same. With Addison's help, Ben picks a lock and they go into the club. And it turns out Tammy is now unambiguously the bad guy, as she shoots her boyfriend dead.
Yes.
And it's not even really clear that they were together in the first place.
I'm pretty sure they weren't. And this is where we learn that Tammy's real name is Carla. And Carla shoots Zach. He is dead. Those other guys are there. And at this point, it does seem like maybe they're working for Carla because she doesn't shoot them.
So why were they trying so hard to break into the house? I don't get what was going on there after the fact.
I don't know. Maybe they were trying to shoot Eva and Jake. Maybe
perhaps.
They were there just to pick up Carla and bring her to the club.
And they somehow got alerted to Jake's and Ben's presence. That's possible. Ziggy ends up saying that an FBI file suggested that a woman was in charge of that gang. And is this another whiff job by Ziggy? Is this just another instance of Ziggy falling down in the job?
Yeah, Ziggy knew Zach was involved in the drug cartel. I don't know. It feels like, yeah, they should have known about Carla, even if they didn't know that Tammy was Carla, right?
Right. So, yeah, that whole thing is confusing in this episode for sure. Back at the bondsman store, Jake complains about their adventures, getting shot at, having a flat tire. You need to get a new rim. He doesn't say that, but he should. And he says that even after all that, he's still not getting the answer he wants from Eva. And he thinks, he repeats the line that we actually end up hearing quite a bit, that maybe the answer is right in front of him, and that he doesn't want to move to Illinois because she wants to continue being a bounty hunter. And I'm guessing that Jake doesn't want to be a bounty hunter anymore because he wants to be in a safer position where he's not getting shot at. He
wants
killed.
Him and Ava to be safe, and he doesn't feel like they're living a very safe lifestyle right now.
And it pretty much appears that Jake breaks up with Eva.
Yeah, he told her goodbye.
Yes.
As in, I'm leaving. You're never going to see me again. He left her, quit his job, and drove away. And
very Kevin Pearson like that lasts for about 30 seconds. So we go into the store, and Ben is kind of upset. Well, no, he's not kind of upset. He's upset that he's basically been broken up with, but there's more to it than that. He blames himself. I was actually thinking originally when he was talking that he was somehow blaming himself for Eva and Ben breaking up in the original timeline. Maybe him being there screwed everything up. But as it turns out, he was just kind of projecting. Mm-hmm. Whereas he's thinking about his girlfriend that he doesn't even know anything about, but he feels like he misses her. He's having
feelings for this person he doesn't remember. And he feels like love is the most important thing right now.
And he wanted a happy ending for Eva and Ben, and that's what he was trying to get to.
Yes. And he has a conversation at this point, right, with Eva's father?
Yes, and he ends up giving her the answer, where once again he says, "What's the most important thing that I ended up teaching you?" Oh, and you wanted to talk about something else about that. You saw on the TV that there was a wedding.
They were showing on the TV Charles and Diana's wedding, which that's the date we're on, July 29th, 1981. It was the date of the royal wedding. And that footage was shown a couple times throughout the episode, playing in the bail bondsman shop. Alberto, the father, had actually made reference to, how Ava and Jake's relationship was like a fairy tale, just like Charles and Diana. And Jake didn't buy that. He knew Charles and Diana weren't the real thing, so he saw through that. But what I really liked here is the use of those historical television clips. This isn't the first time we've seen this in this series. All the way back at the pilot, we had TV footage from Live Aid, and we also got to see footage of the space shuttle launch in the second episode. So that's something they tend to be doing now, is showing us things on the television. It did happen occasionally in the original series. We saw TV clips, but
in the original series, it was basically the music they were using to set the time period. And in this show, it seems to be more about the visual rather than the audio.
Right. Like that's specifically told us, here's exactly where we are. You know, in both of those cases, we're seeing these televised events that were a big deal in the time, and they're incorporating also those stories into what's happening. You know, this whole episode had themes about engagements and marriage and romance, and, you know, it all played right into it. So I like that little detail.
I also thought that the footage that we saw on TV might have also played into Ben getting his memories back, among other things that were going on in this episode and all those themes that we were talking about. Ben's dad, or rather Eva's dad, ends up giving him the answer, in that he suggests going to the train station because that might be a logical way to get across the border.
And also that's where Tammy's parking tickets all were from. So we know that this is a place Tammy goes to a lot.
And the dad ends up repeating the line, "The answer is always in front of you," which we just heard a couple of seconds ago from Justin Hartley's character, Jake.
Which makes sense because Jake also learned this trade from Alberto. So that would have also been the first thing he taught him.
He would have gotten the same advice.
Yeah.
Okay, so Ben ends up going to the train station where we end up seeing Jake. And at first I thought Jake used deductive reasoning to figure out that Ben would end up being at this train station, but the answer is a lot more boring than that. Jake just ended up getting a call from Eva's father, telling him what she was up to. Jake ends up getting captured at gunpoint by Tammy, and oh, you had a lot to say about that.
Okay, so Addison, what are you doing? Okay, we've not established yet that Ziggy has the power to center the hologram onto another character. Maybe they're not using that tactic in this series, but it's something that Al did a lot, right? He could center himself on anybody that they knew, pretty much, and find them and know exactly where they are, and then tell Sam, hey, they're over here. Why is Addison not doing that? And even if you can't center on Carla, you can look around this train station. You're in this little, I mean, not little, but you're in a confined space. So Jake goes off in one direction looking for, Jake goes off to try and take care of the two guys with the guns. Ben is looking for Carla, Tammy, and Addison's just kind of standing there at Ben's side. She's not helping. She's not doing anything. And what happens while they're not doing anything?
Jake ends up getting held up at gunpoint by Tammy herself.
Right. So could Addison not have seen that coming?
Yeah, you figure Ziggy would have warned her, hey, something bad is about to happen, because she did in the original series quite often.
Right. Go get your eyes on the other players in this room. Like, you're not looking at anything. She was literally just standing there. Be helpful. This
was all in all not a good day for Addison. And, what you were just saying about being helpful and just standing there, and that I feel like I should say that to some of my coworkers sometimes. Anyway, moving along. Okay, so they get out of the situation by Ben, or rather Jake, suggesting another proposal at Christmas, which ties into something earlier that I didn't even mention, that the taser was a Christmas present. So Ben uses that taser to hit the suitcase and get the drop on Tammy so that they can arrest her. She drops the suitcase, money comes flying out, and did you see those buttholes like instantly going for the money? Like, what the hell? You see a person drop a suitcase and money falls, and your instant reaction is to go rob that person?
Someone was tasered, there's guns going off, and everybody is rushing to get the money. Yeah.
Yeah, what is wrong with these people? Okay.
But yeah, I liked that, they showed that Ben was able to figure out exactly what Jake meant when he was talking about Christmas. And I'm sure to Jake, this, just showed that connection between him and Ava, that they were, their thoughts are in the same place and they are really close. And of course, that's not what happened. It was Addison helping Ben figure it out. But it was this great moment of reconnecting for them.
Yes, happening between Ben and Jake. Don't they make a cute couple? Back in the future, Jen and Ian have a conversation where we reveal that Jen actually knows about magic's history.
Yes.
And Ian ends up getting emotional, saying that he doesn't want the same thing that happened to Sam, getting lost in time, permanently, to happen to Ben. Back in the present-day timeline, or past timeline, getting confused again, Ben seems to not want to know about what happened to Jake and Eva, which was kind of weird. What do you suppose that was about? Do you think he just kind of assumes that that they work out?
Maybe he didn't want to hear because he knows whatever that happened there, his situation is still what it is, and he's feeling hurt by the situation he is in, and he realizes that even though he was projecting his feelings onto that relationship, that's not his relationship. And
so it doesn't really fix his problem.
He doesn't care because it's not going to fix what he's feeling right now. And he wants to feel what he's feeling, even though it's making him feel miserable. He wants to just live in that little bubble of misery he's feeling with these emotions he's feeling in that little blip of a memory.
Carla ends up going to jail. No surprise there. And it wasn't for parking tickets, as we made that joke about 1,000 times already. I'm probably the most guilty of that. But that's, par for the course for me. And Addison ends up telling Ben anyway about what's going on. But we don't hear that. Ben doesn't hear that because he starts to remember. And he remembers that Addison is his girlfriend, the one he is supposed to marry. And Addison is really happy. They try to touch, but they can't because they're just holograms. Mm-hmm. Or she's just a hologram. I mean, I guess they're
holograms to each other. Yeah.
Aww. And Ben leaps. And this is the first time that we saw Ben leap and go straight to where he goes in this series. Yes. We haven't seen that yet.
And also in that moment, they try touching hands. Her hand goes right through his. And you have to realize that in that moment, he sees that engagement ring on her finger, which he knew about. It's something they had talked about before. But I feel like in that moment, he realized, not only are you my girlfriend, you're my fiance. Like, right. We are engaged. I'm the one who gave you that ring. And he has things to say to her, and now he's left.
And so that will probably be dealt with quite a bit in the next episode, you would think. And then the leap that Ben is taking apparently is to the Wild Wild West. In the promo, they specifically say that he is leaping to 1879. I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know that I like that we're doing... I know we were trying to do this slingshot thing to get outside of Ben's lifetime.
Mm-hmm. This is really far outside of Ben's lifetime.
Yeah, that just seems too extreme.
That seemed like a really big slingshot.
So I'm thinking maybe they should have gone like a little bit out of the time, out of his lifetime, and then a little bit more out of the lifetime.
I mean, where were we when we were 1971 when they were like, that's impossible. Well, we've gone like another 100 years all of a sudden.
I mean, unless he's leaping into a relative, but based in the mirror image, I don't think so.
Yeah, they look to be Native American or Hispanic, Southwestern culture somewhere. So, yeah, I don't know. It's going to be a different episode, right, than anything we've seen before. We haven't had a real full-on Western experience.
And I gotta say, I am not a big fan of Westerns, so I'm not sure how I'm going to feel about this episode after all.
Yeah, me too.
But you have any additional thoughts on the promo?
No, that was really all the promo gave us, right? It seemed really quick and to the point this time. 16 seconds. There was no project-based side of the promo like we usually get. So, yeah, we're gonna go check out the Wild West next week.
So I guess this is a good time to get back into your issues with the scene with Magic and Ian.
Okay. So, yeah, let's break down that whole monologue from Magic, and then I'll tell you my thoughts, my issue with it, and I also have some theories that we can talk about. So, what I did like is that we got to hear Magic's perspective on what happened when Sam leaped into him. And he described it as feeling a nudge in his chest. He said it felt like a door was being pushed open, and he says, I let that person in. So he knew, at least on some level, that there was another person involved in kind of taking over his life. I'm not sure if he meant that he realized that up front or he realized later that that's what that feeling was. But it's kind of insinuating that the host has to be accepting of this happening to them.
Yeah, I was curious about that. Did that mean that if Magic said no, that Sam wouldn't leap there?
Right. Does that maybe give us some kind of a thought as to why Sam sometimes doesn't seem to be in the best person to do a job?
Right. I had noted that
because
before.
maybe, you know, that was the closest willing host. The host had to be open to allowing this experience to happen to them, you know, on some level in their soul. That's
definitely a new, interesting take on the series.
Yeah,
that
it's
never
something
had before.
that we haven't heard that. And so, but he said he went on to, he blacked out and he came to a day later, which it was a little more than 24 hours Sam was there, but basically, yeah, it was a day later. And so he's saying he had no memories of that time whatsoever. He just blacked out.
And we've talked about this before. That's a huge problem for many situations where Sam is in, not having any memory of what took place during that time.
Right.
And what you were talking about before, like the person can come back in and find themselves in a situation that they don't want to be in because Sam created it that way.
Mm-hmm. And also, they've missed big, important things in many cases. So let's see. He also said he had vivid dreams about Sam. Now, I again was a little unsure what he meant. Did he mean he's dreaming about that missing time and seeing in his mind images of the part of his life he missed? Does he mean he's physically seeing Sam's face? Which could be possible because when he was in the waiting room, he'd be looking into a mirror of Sam's face.
Absolutely. You could be remembering that.
Right. So yeah, he said he was dreaming of Sam, of this man that had taken over his body. And I feel like that could lead to a lot of discussion right there. Like, do people really remember Sam? Is Sam leaving some part of him behind in these people?
And it is a question that we always had. What happens to the host when they return?
Mm-hmm.
And so this is excellent for that, but there's also more questions here.
Yeah. And so then he goes on to explain that how he first found out about Quantum Leap is when he became an admiral. He learned that his name was on a secret file and what he, quote, called a mothballed science program the military had funded. And that's when he first saw a photo of Sam. And when he said that, it made me think he was physically seeing Sam's image in his head, which again could be a residual memory of being in the waiting room. Because sillily, as I've said before, it makes no sense that they would show these people a mirror, but they did. And this is the part that I have a problem with. So Magic tells Ian in this moment, every soldier in the platoon, including Magic, was originally killed in action, and Sam saved them all.
Which is not how the Leap Home Part 2 played out.
It's not. That's not what happened in the history we know. In the history that we know, Tom was supposed to die.
And then there was one other character, General Grimwald, that died in the original history that you don't even remember. But
I vaguely remember that, but I remember the main focus was Sam wants to save Tom. Sam wants to save Tom. Sam brought Maggie in, the photojournalist. So because Al said if she does a story on this, we're going to have more information about how to, play out this mission. They were going to have more details than they did before. Maggie ends up dying. Tom lives. And Sam had this very, ethical dilemma where he says, I just traded my brother's life for Maggie's. And he felt horrible about this because he caused this woman to die in order to save Tom's life. He said, is that a win? That's not a win. But if the original history was the entire platoon died and he just saved all of them, including, his host Magic and his brother Tom, that would seem like a win, right? If you just saved a dozen people's lives. And they didn't say that. They never in that episode said that that was what happened in the original story.
So yes, this is inconsistent with what we saw in the Leap Home
that
Part
was
2.
my problem with this. And I get them saying, Magic saying like, yes, Sam saved my life. And I get that they want that to be the motivation, but that's not what happened in the original series. So Magic went on to say that he started the project back up. And the sole reason he did so was because of the motto, leave no man behind. And he wants to save Sam's life, get him back. And that's the entire reason that the project is back, was to get Sam.
And I think I already said this earlier, which I probably shouldn't have. But that makes Magic's motivations the same as Janice's. And you had more to say about that, actually.
Yeah, so something that I remembered last week, that I remembered after we recorded that I didn't mention. So let me get into that now, was Janice. And if we remember, we heard when Janice first got into Ziggy, and that the reason that she was able to do that was because of a bug in the computer program. And that bug was in the hard drive that Jen took from Janice's basement. And to me, this really looked like more evidence that Jen is involved with Janice and is totally in on whatever this secret plan is on hijacking the project. And I feel like, because Jen was very, very insistent on getting that particular hard drive, bringing it back to the project, and oh, look, we have a virus now that let Janice in. And I totally see this.
Seems a little sus.
I totally see this as evidence that Jen is in on it. And speaking of the basement blew up. It all had to have been set up that way because Janice needed that bug to get into the program so that she can get access to Ziggy. And now we have wherever she's working with that chamber that she's building, that's somewhere else, right? So that basement isn't even where she was actually doing her work. I feel like the whole basement was a decoy. Her real work's being done wherever that chamber's being built. And I think Jen's totally in on it. And now, after learning that Magic's motivations completely line up with what we think Janice's are, and that Jen knew all about the Magic Sam connection, I'm totally 100% convinced that Jen is in on this, and I'm starting to think Magic might have known more than he's leading on to. I don't think he was fully involved in whatever Janice and Jen and Ben are doing, but I think he may have knew something was up and kind of looked the other way. And I think he knew Janice was going to do something.
Interesting thoughts. We will certainly see how this plays out. Do you have any other additional thoughts?
No, I think that pretty much covered it. Again, this was a really great episode. We got a lot of things that we were waiting for. We don't have a lot to go on as far as what's going to happen next week, so we don't have a lot of speculation yet on where that's going to go.
I did have one speculation.
Okay.
It mentioned in the description for the episode that a senator would be visiting the project.
Yes.
And my speculation is that person is going to be Tom. And we saw Tom in the flashbacks, but we also, if you read the books, which are not necessarily considered canon, Tom was a senator in a book called Mirror's Edge, which was the lead into Mirror Image, the series finale, which that means that book kind of played out also disappointingly, even more frustrating than the final episode of the original series. But yeah, that's my speculation, that we might see Tom next week.
Wow. And that would be fun. I'd love to hear about Tom, especially now that they've brought Tom's name into this story, right?
Yeah.
They've told us who he is for those people who don't know. And, yeah.
All right, so we would like to hear from you. Did you like this episode? What do you think of our podcast? Stacie can be reached at...
I can be reached on Twitter at TVN Coupon Talk.
If you like this video and want to support the channel, you can follow me on Twitter at Korman Productions. You can buy something from the Korman Productions store on Zazzle. You can buy me a coffee, which is a new way to support content creators such as myself. You can follow and subscribe to my podcast. And on my YouTube channel, you can like, share, and comment, as well as subscribing to my channel. This is Dave and Stacie from Korman Productions, signing off.